Hi, everyone. Welcome to Science in the Time of Corona, where we talk with scientists about what it's like to conduct research during a pandemic. My name is Layla. I'm a senior anthropology major at Reed College, and I'm interested in learning about and sharing the daily lives of scientists. Over the last several months, as travel and in-person meetings have been put on hold, scientists have had to change the way that they share their research with one another. One important component about how scientists share their research with one another is through scientific conferences. And these are probably the mode of communication that has been impacted the most by COVID-19. Some of our previous episodes have touched on the topic of conferences, and today we'll focus more closely on a few questions about conferences. What is special about in-person conferences, and what is their utility in science? How does the transition to online conferences change their role in science? And what do online conferences have to offer that's not possible with in-person conferences? So today we'll talk with two scientists about their experiences attending and planning conferences. And if you're joining us live on YouTube or Facebook, please ask your questions in the live chat box, and we'd love to have you be part of this discussion. So would each of you like to just introduce yourselves and say a little bit about your expertise? Maybe Ignacia first.
Hi, my name is Ignacia Echeverria. I'm an assistant adjunct professor at the CMP department, Cellular and Molecular Pharmacology. And I do research in computational structural biology, in particular combining different data types to solve the structures of challenging protein assemblies like host pathogen complexes.
And Natalia.
Hi, everyone. I'm Natalia Jura. I am an associate professor also in the CMP department and in Cardiovascular Research Institute, or CVRI, here at UCSF. I'm also proudly an associate director of QBI. My lab is a structural biology lab with a cell biology twist. We're very much interested in molecular mechanisms of signaling molecules such as receptor tyrosine kinases, and are trying to understand how they assemble together into working molecular machines using structural biology approaches.
Nice, thank you. And so just as kind of an introduction for mostly for non-scientists who might not be familiar with what goes on at a conference, what conferences have to offer to scientists, why they're so important, I'd love to hear what's the most exciting or most interesting thing that's happened for you as a result of a conference that you've been to. Maybe Natalia first.
Okay, so there are many examples of actually really great things that happen for me at the conferences, but I was very fortunate. One thing that stands out for me happened a couple of years ago when I ventured into this poster session and walked around and found the scientist from Poland, where I'm from. So out of curiosity, I stopped by his poster and we just started chatting about what he works on. He's a computational biologist, and he discovered a completely new kinase that hasn't been annotated yet. Kinases are proteins my lab work on, and asked me whether I'm interested in working on it. I was an assistant professor back then, and that sounded super great to work on a protein no one knows about. And we have just published this work last year with Krzysztof Pawłowski. He's this Polish scientist, and it really allowed us to describe a completely new protein and completely new function. And I would never ever really run into him otherwise if it wasn't for this meeting, which was up in Maine, far away from where we both are. So this random encounters, that they can only happen in such conferences.
Thank you. And Ignacia, what about you?
Yeah, I don't have a cool story of an unknown kinase, but when I was a graduate student, for me, giving talks at conferences and seeing that like my scientific heroes were like in the audience, people that I haven't met, but I have read their papers, and I was like so familiar with their papers, seeing them, and then they coming and asking me questions and seeing them interested in my work was a huge boost of like, yeah, this is the career that I want to have, and this is like was very, very motivating and humbling at the same time.
Nice. Yeah. And so what do you most look forward to when you're attending a scientific conference? And is it always the same thing, or is it sometimes different? Maybe Ignacia first?
So for the people that are like not familiar with conferences, it's important to notice that conferences are like, there are different types of conference, and what you can get out of them is very different. You have like small, very specific conference with 20, 30 people where you are like in a closed environment, having all your meals together and talking very deeply about one topic. And then you have huge, large conferences with tens of thousands of attendees, and then hundreds of sessions or tens of sessions at the same time. And in all these conferences, there's like three components that are going on, right? Is the science that you're learning that you have never seen, is the science that you work on, that you're getting updated on, and that you're catching up with your own collaborators. And then there's the aspect of like meeting new people and the serendipity of like the basically very unknown interactions. And I think that those interactions do change depending on the size of the conference. So like, for example, large conferences have the advantage that you run into, like if you go to any society meeting, you start running into people from different aspects of your career. Like you would run from people from your PhD, from your postdoc, and you catch up, and you might reignite a collaboration, or they would introduce you to somebody new, and you can start a new collaboration. So I do really I really like that, right? Catching up with old friends. And then from small conferences, I just really like the state of mind that you can get, right? You're in this space, you're not in the lab, you're not working, and you're thinking about one topic very, very deeply. So that's something I really like from small conferences.
Nice. And Natalia, do you have anything to add?
Well, I think for me, what's also very important is that when you go to a conference, you leave a lot of stuff behind, and you really allow yourself to, for a moment, stop thinking about what you're working on daily and immerse yourself fully into other people's work. And that separation, I think, is very refreshing. And that's why when we come back, we have all these great ideas, because we, for a moment, were immersed in this different environment. And that's sort of almost regardless of whether the conference is small or large. So that's what I like a lot.
That's very cool. I think we have an audience question. Yeah, so do you think the chances of getting to interact with other scientists increased with the virtual setup than with the in-person setup? Natalia, what do you think?
Well, I feel that at this very, very moment right now, the answer for me is rather no. Because also, the conferences haven't really picked up enough to fill that space that's a little bit void right now of interactions. I think there is a potential there for sure, and I think we're going to talk about it a little bit later today, for more interactions and interactions with people who would normally not come to the conferences. But for now, it's just harder because it's a bit of a one-to-one interaction over Zoom. It's a little bit harder to mix and mingle and do things the way we used to do it. So we have to probably change a little bit. Technology has to catch up. that's how I feel. I don't know, Ignacia, what you think.
Yeah, I totally agree with you, Natalia. And also it has to do with like, yeah, everybody's personality, right? There's people that are like very engaged in the platforms that already exist. Let's say that there's people that are really active in Twitter and they're forming collaborations in Twitter. I personally am not, like, I don't know, it doesn't come easy to me, those kind of interactions. So I think that at the moment, I do miss the social, like, one-to-one interactions with like human people in real. But I think that is something that is going to evolve, and scientists are always looking for ways to communicate. So we will just adjust to this new virtual reality.
Yeah. And so, Natalia, you had mentioned ways that scientists are maybe adapting and sort of innovating in this time with online conferences. What for you is some of the things that show promise with online conferences?
Yeah, so I did sort of mention already that the cost is now much lower to attend, and most frequently it's not, doesn't even exist. So that's fantastic. And for countries which are typically far away and maybe not as rich, to be able to send trainees to really amazing conferences and allow them to experience this sort of more in person. So I think that's an opportunity for sure. Another opportunity is to sort of make a conference a little bit longer living sort of creature, and such that it doesn't really end when the conference ends, but it sort of still percolates online and sort of allows for the feedback to be delivered and for the discussions to be going. And one of such examples, for example, is the FACEP platform. I'm speaking from personal experience because I'm one of the co-organizers of a meeting that's going to happen in the end of September on cancer cell signaling. And we have been very impressed by how FACEP is trying to sort of make a good virtual experience out of poster sessions. And basically every presenter now has an own website in which the poster exists as a PDF, but also you can make a YouTube movie or a quick time movie where you walk people through your poster. Then people can type their comments. You're, as a presenter, are available to answer questions in real time. But the comments also can be posted anytime for a couple of weeks following the conference, and the presenter can come back and continue answering them or connecting with the people who ask questions and sort of, maybe initiate collaborations, but at least following up on the discussion. And I feel like that's really quite remarkable. Because for me, poster sessions are always so busy. You go and you talk to so many people and all these great ideas come in, but then you talk to someone else, and in the end of these 2 hours, you're like, okay, hold on, I had this great idea. What was it? I didn't write it down. And I feel like this virtual format makes it a little bit more organized and sort of longer living. So I think there is a potential in this to create something new that wasn't possible before.
Nice. That's really great to hear about. And Ignacia, do you have any other sort of positive sides to online conferences to add?
Yeah, I think that you can add way more intentionality in the conferences and really try to give direction to certain interactions that wouldn't happen otherwise, right? And by that, I mean, right, you could have special sessions for trainees or for postdoc or young faculties to mingle with senior scientists and things like that, where like conferences are busy and you might like you're like a junior scientist and you might want to talk to somebody else, but you know that this person like it's really popular is always like surrounded by other people. So having like the ability to intentionally create record rooms or roundtables where you mix people, I think is going to really help some people, especially people that are like more introverted or that have more difficulties, or that feel more comfortable in a small environment asking a question rather than to a big audience.
Yeah, that's also really great, because in a previous interview session, we heard from some grad students about how the lack of in-person conferences was potentially going to be detrimental to their sort of networking abilities and their ability to find a lab to go into when they're done. So that's really great to hear about, that maybe online could facilitate that even better. So kind of following this thread, I guess, and back to your initial stories of things that have come out of conferences, do you think that those sorts of interactions where you meet someone at a conference and follow up with them after and kind of spark a collaboration from that, could that be something that can happen online? And what do you think that we can do in order to facilitate those things? Maybe Natalia first.
I think it can happen. I always feel that scientists find a way. We're all very determined to solve our scientific problems, and we dig and we find connections. I think it's going to be, it's an adjustment, and I hope it's a temporary adjustment, and a lot of in-person interactions will come back, because I don't think we can replace them, and we shouldn't replace them. It's possible. I think it just requires all of us to be more willing, to be creative, to think more. It's like we can't just sit there and complain that, oh, we are all zoomed out and tired and we don't want to do it. Like, we have to also make an effort and sort of and try to do it and try to make it happen. And think about, oh, here, this guy works on something that's similar to what I do. Okay, how do I get connected with this person? What I found, at least, is that nowadays people are really responsive when you email them and when you call them, because that that's the only way to get in touch. So I think we'll find a way, I don't think it's temporary. So it's going to be back, and we will survive during this time. And let's just make the best out of it.
Yeah. Ignacia, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, I think that what is going to happen out of this is that we're going to hopefully get the best of the two worlds. That conferences in the future are still going to have the human components. Academics and scientists have been like congregating since the beginning of history, probably. So that is going to come back in one way or another. But yeah, and not only in academia, the digital aspect is changing so many fields, right? That now conferences, I think, they're going to have both components, and it's going to be nice also to have these new platforms to keep connecting after the conferences. So that is going to be, I think, an add-on from this time.
Yeah, and following up on that, I'd love to hear more about what you two might imagine a sort of blended conference format, or maybe not blended, but having in the future potentially in person and online. What do you think each format has to offer specifically? Maybe Ignacia first.
Yeah, so I think that in the future, conferences are going to be way more available. All talks are going to be recorded and online. So that's going to be really nice, because you either can, if you miss one, you can watch it, or you can revisit something, or it is going to be accessible to people around the world that may not have the resources. also conferences are great, but they are also can be also very disruptive because of all the travel. So you might be able to decide, right, how many trips you want to take a year because of because of your own personal situation, family situation. So being able to choose to attend or not to not attend. And I think that that's going to be very nice, especially for people with young families. And then, yeah, I think that other than the talks being recorded, there's going to be some better platforms online to access all this information, right? So it's not going to be like the big booklet with the titles and abstracts of all talk, but a better evolution of that with like fancy software where you can find the talks and ways to communicate with the different scientists and so on. So I do think that that's how conferences are going to start looking in the future.
Nice. And Natalia, what about you?
I really sort of agree with everything, Ignacia, what you said. I think that it would be just fantastic to sort of have this participation in conferences being almost equivalent for people who choose to travel and for people who choose to attend from home. And while, you know, attending from home is challenging because you can't make this jump where you forget or leave everything behind and you get yourself immersed in this mode. As you said, for a lot of us, it's just really helping to maintain better life-work balance, don't disrupt our families so tremendously with travel that is so much for scientists, and you kind of constantly feel like you have to keep up with that to be on that train that goes so fast. But if that stigma is removed, then you actually are fully participating member of the conference by being virtual. You know, I think that would be fantastic. You know, I can envision it in the room. We have two screens. One is the talk, another one is like a Zoom session, and people can type their questions and even ask them in person on the screen. I mean, how cool would that be? And what's really amazing is that in the end of it, when we emerge from this pandemic, we'll have all these amazing tools that all these clever guys are putting together to actually make this happen. And if it wasn't for the pandemic, it would probably take much longer to develop these tools, and people would be very reluctant to try them. And everybody would be saying how important it is to be in person everywhere. And we kind of made this amazing leap in going into the future. So, you know, that's a sort of positive way of looking at it. I still feel that in-person interactions are, you know, you can't replace them. You can't replace this evening in a bar where you sit over beer and talk about experiment you've done 20 years ago and how cool it connects to the talk you just heard. But again, you know, we can all choose to do some of these conferences a year, and then all the other ones that we would really like to attend, but we really cannot, we can go virtual. And, you know, I am an optimist, and I think that would be just fantastic if we could make this happen.
Yeah, that sounds pretty great. And I appreciate both of you talking about, yeah, like specifically which aspects of the in-person and virtual are really standing out and could be carried into the future. And so I think that we don't have any more audience questions. Do either of you have thoughts to wrap up about, I don't know, what you hope for the future, or just any wrapping up thoughts? Sorry, maybe Natalia first.
Well, I feel like, I feel that the anxiety about conferences is definitely the highest among young trainees and people who, young faculty, postdocs, graduate students who, for whom networking is so essential. And I think we should all be paying attention to how to make sure this is possible, how we can make it easier for these young scientists to enter the platforms, be visible on these platforms, and facilitate how they interact with senior faculty, how they mingle, and how they establish collaborations. I think anxiety is high among this particular group. And this is something that we really have to be very attentive to. So, I would encourage all conference organizers to put an extra effort into showcasing young talent, sort of unknown names, and making extra effort to make sure that they are visible. During these times.
Yeah, that sounds great. Ignacio, what about you?
Yeah, I agree totally with Natalia. This is a huge opportunity, both to increase the diversity and participation in science, and to develop new technologies to make us more effective and more efficient scientists in the way we communicate. And yeah, it's not one thing or the other. Human interactions are not going to be replaced, but we can enhance them, and we can have a little bit of everything. So yes.
Nice. Well, thank you both for joining me today. And thank you to everyone who watched. And, sorry.
Thank you, Layla. I just wanted to thank you for making an effort to discuss those things and sort of make us think about them. It's really good.
Yes, thank you, Layla. This has been super fun, just thinking about these topics and discussing them.
Oh, if you two are up for it, we have a few more minutes actually before 12:30, and we have one audience question that just came in. Do you think that online conferences should offer a more inclusive speaker roster where postdocs and PIs are considered at the same level for giving talks? Maybe Ignacia?
Absolutely. But I think that should apply not only for online conferences, for in-person conferences as well.
And Natalia?
Yeah, I think that, has been sort of something that was up in the air even before the virtual world came in, which is how to, increase junior trainees sort of exposure at the meetings. And, hopefully with the virtual format, this is just going to be more seamless and smooth, but would be really great. Because after all, young people do the most exciting science. So it's always fun to hear from them.
That's nice. Okay, well, now we'll wrap up for real. If anyone who is watching this not live has questions, feel free to leave them in the comments. And thank you all who joined.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.